I'm gonna encourage
And
them.
to think that's the only reason God brought me to this church.
You know, that's probably the truth. Because somebody else might have fallen there instead of you. See?
I'm talking about the abuse that the pastor's wife gives me.
That's right.
Well, she gives everybody abuse.
I
All
do.
mean,
I do usually save a lot of my good stuff for Joe.
we're on.
Okay, though. Lord, thank you, Almighty God. We just praise you and worship you and just ask that you would show us tonight the things that you would want us to know, the information we want to know. That we're here to honor you and to worship you through whatever we're doing. So just let me be a beacon to it. We just give you the thanks and the praise for it. In Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's fine. We'll see y'all later.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that took too long.
Yeah, I know. You're real hungry, aren't you?
Must be.
You have to pardon me while I finish what I teach.
No, pardon me, all right. I find it interesting that you think about it. Pastors show up.
Yeah.
Well,
We'll show up.
here we are.
Here we are.
Why don't we sing a quartet?
Why not? With these two, Charlie, you and I'd be all right. But
Yeah,
these two
no, I
here,
know.
Not,
I know.
how about we just don't sing a duet?
Yeah, well, we can do that. We can do
Mhm.
that.
What?
go ahead and give me control of the mic back here.
Mm-hmm.
You two sing.
In case you people are wondering when this recording goes out or whatever,
Yeah.
that's Sister Ellen.
The vicious.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who to pray for, either her or him.
Him.
I'm not sure which one to do.
Him. He's the one
Well,
crazy.
here, I tell you. I
We
want to
have a
read,
good time though.
I'm going to read you a true story.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys remember back in the 50s.
No,
I'm born
There
in
was,
50.
no.
you just be quiet. There was a well-known radio host, and he was a comedian too, you know, he's a songwriter
Hmm.
out in Hollywood. Stuart Hamblin. You remember him?
Mm.
Hamblin? Well, but the thing was, he was noted for his drinking and the womanizing and partying and all that stuff that goes on out there in Hollywood, you know. And one of his biggest hits at the time was I won't go hurting. I won't go hunting with you, Jake,
Mm-hmm.
but I'll go chasing women.
Yep, I've heard that.
Yeah. So one day, along came a young preacher who was holding a tent revival, and Hamlin had him on his radio show, presumably to poke fun at him.
Hmm.
Well, in order to gather more material for his show, Hamlin showed up at one of the revival meetings, and early in the service, the preacher announced, "There's one man in this audience who is a big fake."
Hmm.
And there were probably others who thought the same thing, but Hamlin was pretty convinced that he was the one that the preacher was talking about. So, now, some would say that's conviction,
Yeah.
but he was having none of that, to see. He wouldn't believe that. So still the words continued, it haunted him for a couple of nights later. He showed up drunk at the preacher's hotel door around about 2 a.m, demanding that the preacher pray for him. But the preachers refused, saying, "This is between you and God, because I'm not going to get in the middle of it." But he did invite Stuart in, and they talked till about 5 a.m, at which point he dropped his knees with tears and he cried out to God. But that's not the end of the story. Now, Pastor, you must have heard this one. Haven't you? Have you not? Well, it's very interesting, I thought. So he quit drinking, he quit chasing women, he quit everything that was fun, as he thought. And soon he began to lose favor with the Hollywood crowd because he wasn't jumping around with them anymore. And he was ultimately fired by the radio station when he refused to accept the beer company as a sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
And hard times were upon him there, so he tried writing a couple of Christian songs, but the only one that had any success was This Old House.
Oh yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
And that was written for, Rosemary Clooney was written for it. They were friends. So he continued to the struggle. And a long time, a friend named John took him aside and told him, he says, are all your trouble started when you got religion? Was it worth it all? Stewart answered simply, yes. Then his friend asked, says, you like to do so much, don't you ever miss it? And his answer was no. He said, I don't understand how, or John said, I don't understand how you could give it up so easily. And Stewart's response was, it's no big secret. I mean, all things are possible with God. And to this, John said, that's a catchy phrase.
Yeah.
He says, you should write a song about it. Well, the rest is history. He wrote It Is No Secret.
Mm.
Remember?
Well, I've heard that one for sure.
It is no secret what God can do. What he's done for others, he'll do for you.
Amen.
Yeah. So with the arms open, and he'll welcome you, you know that. By the way, the friend's name was John Wayne, and the young preacher refused to pray for him was Billy Graham.
Oh,
Now, that's a story.
yeah.
So that was John, huh?
That was the John.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
He's always one of my favorites. I didn't know he's the one that wrote those songs and stuff? Really?
Not
Not John Wayne.
Not John Wayne. John
Oh.
Hemlin did.
Oh, okay. Well, I know that John Wayne isn't John Wayne's real name.
Marion.
So,
No, it was Marion.
yeah,
Something.
Morrison.
Yes. Marion.
From
Yeah.
Winterset, Iowa.
No wonder he changed it. I'd change it when I was a movie star or not.
Uh,
Doesn't cost me. Don't you call me Marion.
a lot of guys, I mean, you know, that was a popular name way
My
back.
daddy better not call me Sue.
That's it. That's it.
Charlie Sue.
Charlie. Sue Charlie. Sue Shanks. Well, there is
Sue
a
Shanks.
Susie Shanks. She's my
Well,
cousin.
probably.
Well, here we are. I wonder
Here
who's
we
watching besides the Lord.
Well, that's the main one.
He's on the main menu, isn't he?
Yeah, he's watching you,
Or
Charlie.
he is the main menu.
Well, sure.
Magnifying glass.
I tell those guys on the net that every day, because I explained to them that when we're praying for somebody, I ask them not to text while we're praying,
Right.
because it tends to interfere and just distracts, you know.
Sure.
And then I'll say, of course, I have no idea whether you're doing it or not, can't see it,
Mm-hmm.
but guess who can?
Mm-hmm.
And he's all counts anyway, so.
That's right.
Well, we'll just get going on here.
Okay.
I know he was kind of laughing because the information, we'll be in Isaiah for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good book.
Mm-hmm. There's a bit
We
to it.
could be here a long time, actually,
Well, we can.
because
Oh, yeah.
this is really basically an introduction
Mm-hmm.
to it. And, but like I've said before, what I'm seeing and studying these prophets like this, so far, they all have the same outline almost.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're different periods of time that they live, so they're different people and all that, but it seems to me that the prophecies are the same, gearing down the same line all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, it's certainly helping me see this book doesn't look that thick to me anymore.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm beginning to see how
Mhm.
it sets in there.
Works together.
It is. It really is. Didn't somebody say one time, I don't know if it's a scientist exactly, but I think it was that a computer probably couldn't compute everything the way
Oh,
this is put
yeah.
together.
No,
Probably could do it, the way they were talking about it.
no.
I gotta believe that.
No, yeah.
Well, I'm gonna go on with it, and others aren't here, I mean, they aren't, so. Well, it is gonna be starting.
There you go.
Being here.
The first setting, you know, the first half of the book is the book in Judah, you recall. Now, I wanna tell you, I know we're gonna bring in names of kings and nations. Now, you guys have studied in your time probably more than a lot anyway.
Mm.
But I don't, like I told him, I don't expect to remember all that. I can't.
Can't even say it all.
But you,
No test.
But I just, it gives us an idea of the time that somebody lived and how they lived and who with and all those sorts of things and what's going on while they're living and what kind of people they were and how did God use them as prophets. And it just gives us an overview. Is the reason I feel like doing it this way. I don't expect to know all that. It'd be nice if the guy could, but I don't have a photographic memory. Don't have perfect pitch either. I'm glad. Joe, you just keep eating. So, setting of the first half of the book is Judah, and it's in the days of Assyria, of the Assyrians. Excuse me, and the setting of the second half is in the book of Babylon, and then Jerusalem, and then beyond that, and you come into what they call the Target Age, and then in the first half of the book is kind of weird. They call it pre-exilic Israel before they went into exile. And the target audience in the second is Israel during the exile itself. And at the return of it, they are different. But Isaiah did not. So both the oracles and things that are in there, they look to a distant future for the main meaning of it and the application of the book itself. Matter of fact, each section there includes pretty vivid descriptions and some very generally poetic type descriptions too. But by doing how they've done this, they've fueled a lot of controversy about the unity of the book and the prophet himself. So that's how I feel like studying. Yeah, I'm just curious. I'm sure he had. You guys have done this real much of a study on Isaiah?
I have not. Have you?
I read a lot in Isaiah.
I like a lot of Isaiah, of course, that I've come across.
A lot of
I've never really done a study.
prophecy about Jesus in Isaiah. Probably not more in Isaiah than any book of the Bible.
Well, we're gonna read scripture. I mean, probably most all the scripture in the entire book of Isaiah as we go along here. And as a prelim to that is why we're doing this, to get an idea of there again of what's going on. And as I get into this, I know you're going to agree because you're going to go, what? Oh my Lord! Say that again. Who? I'm going to start out with the Assyrian period here, because on one thing here we have a historical background of the book during the Assyrian crisis, and there are some pretty crucial events during that time. And so and you can write this down if you like. I'll try to not get too fast on stuff. But the first one is called the young lion roars. So in 1743 BC, 743 BC.
You said 17.
Shut up, would you please? I mean, please be quiet.
I'm like, I knew it wasn't that far
Are you?
back.
Oh,
How would you know that?
Because Isaiah was between 740 and 698 BC.
So,
he's reading it.
He said 1746. Did he or did he not?
I'm going home. Bye.
I know. Don't he kind of just get you there real quick?
Yeah, real fast.
That's what I
Just
found.
saying.
No, he's right. 743 BC. There's a coalition under Azariah. I don't know how you pronounce it against. These are wonderful things. Now, if you know how to pronounce these, please do.
No.
Where you at?
I wish I
Tiglath-Pilser.
Where you at in them? What chapter and verse?
This just hang loosely.
He's not in a chapter or verse yet.
And
Joe.
that was the third, this guy. It was 743, 738, and 735. The record of that's in 2 Kings, chapter 15, 19, and 20. Oh, we're on TV, I gotta watch it.
Be nice, Joe. I mean,
It wasn't me that did
Charlie.
that.
I'm
And
just
we
saying
should
this-
probably go there.
Second Kings.
Hmm. Matter of fact, you are so adamant
Mhm.
about this thing that I dare say you probably should be the one that reads it.
Oh, I
But
did too.
before you read it, what it's gonna say and tell us is how these kings, Rezin, Manahem, Hiram, were put under tribute to Assyria. That could have been in 1738. There's a,
That's what I thought.
They don't
First
know for
Kings,
sure.
Second Kings.
but 19 and 20.
What,
I'm not gonna chew my cabbage but once.
okay, what chapter?
I'm not that, you can't get it, I'll have to do it myself.
Okay.
It's 2 Kings 15,
Okay.
19 and 20. It's on page 438
Mm,
or something like that.
I hope him.
Okay. Pul, king of Assyria, came against the land, and Nahum gave Pul 1,000 talents of silver, that his hand might be with him to strengthen the kingdom under his control.
Hmm.
And Menahem exacted the money from Israel, from all the very wealthy, from each man 50 shekels of silver, to give to the king of Assyria. So the king of Assyria turned back and did not stay there in the land.
Yes, sir. And you know how much money that is in ours? 384 million bucks.
See, and that was how many shekels?
1,000 talents of silver.
1,000 talents of silver. It's 384 million smackaroos. You know, just a little bit of change.
Boxing, walking around money.
So now you see what that is about, hopefully. The second one is it's entitled The Smoking Firebrand and the Trembling Heart. Well, they called it the Syro-Pharamite War. Took place in 1735, 1733. And 2 Kings 15 and 16, and we're talking chapters here. And if we read that, and I'm thinking at some point we probably will read some of these chapters all the way through like that, just because it tells. But this is talking about an attempt to set up this Ben Tabel on the throne with, I call him Azaz, of the dynasty of David, actually. He would not go along with this treaty.
Hmm.
So he appealed to this Tiglath-Pileser, I would have to say it better, of Assyria for help. Thought that was a mistake to do that. And we haven't even said who this is, but there was another one called Pekah. Like I said, you can't remember all this. But he was removed, and Hosea, we certainly know of, was put in power in Israel. Ahaz, I think is probably how that's pronounced, became a son of Pul, and he was a political pawn, basically, for this Tiglath-Pileser. There's a way of saying it without, I'm just not getting. All of these guys, they're just underhanded. They're evil in the sight of God. Every one of them.
Mhm.
So then you get into another title, as it were, called the Silly Dove Without Understanding. Because Hosea did revolt. And in 1722, there was a call to Egypt which took place there. And we can look at 2 Chronicles chapter 28, verse 21, which we can go to. Second Chronicles 28, verse 21. I just go ahead and read it so we can. But he says that although Ahaz, how do you pronounce it?
Ahaz.
Ahaz, that makes sense. Ahaz, yes. Took a portion out of the house of the Lord and out of the palace of the king of the princes and gave it to the king of Assyria. It didn't help him, of course, to do that. It's not something you do, you know. But in 1720, I'm there to do it again, 722, it's the glasses,
Yeah,
I see double.
yeah.
That Samaria finally did fall to this Sargon II, and he was a general under the successor of Shalmaneser, who was the first king that started the siege they had in Samaria anyway, and this guy died during that time. So his successor finished off the kingdom of Israel. And there again, we could go over here and read the entire chapter and we'll talk about that. We will be doing all that, by the way, at some point. So I'm kind of going to wait, I think, in this case, for others to get in so they can get part of that. The fourth one here is called The Bird in the Cage. And there were rebellions during the reign of Hezekiah in Judah. Of course, we know 713, 705, 701. And in 713, Ashdod rebelled against the Sargon. You can go to Isaiah 20. You will see, of course, we're talking about the entire chapter, which is not long in this case. And it will talk about what we just explained there, the rebellion and so forth. Because Ashdod rebelled against Sargon. And then you can see Isaiah 30 and 31 will talk about Assyria invading the land, which is, well, this is really the rebellion against this king. And those are 2 chapters worth of that. But there again, not to read right tonight. But you can see so much. One of the things that got me on some of this, how this seems to parallel so much our nations and how we are. And I keep thinking of the people that apparently just don't put God in their lives at all. But as an example, look at the beginning of 31. Well, first, look at 30. He says, "Woe to the rebellious children, declares the Lord, who execute a plan, but not mine, and make an alliance, but not of my spirit, in order to add sin to sin." And I keep thinking of our government and what's going on there, and the fight that Trump seems to be having. Well, not seeming, he is. And I think about that other side, how they're doing stuff. Wasn't that it? And then if you, and again, we can go through this whole chapter here, you can see, it talks about all the different things that happened and, along that line, but we'll do that later. And then the first part of the 31 is like this, like, God's been hitting me awfully hard to rely on Him, just to flat rely on Him with everything, not just some things. But look, what he says, he says, "Woe to those who go down to Egypt for help and rely on horses and trust in chariots because there are many, and in horsemen because they're very strong, but they do not look to the Holy One of Israel, nor seek the Lord." God just doesn't like that. I've been reading a bunch of it. So, so there's an account up there where the invasion of the army of the north was in Isaiah 10. We don't necessarily need to go back to that, but we later can. We know that that was Micah was a contemporary there. He describes the invasion of another part of the army from the lowlands. You can look there. Well, let's just go to Micah for a minute. It's Micah 1. Micah, where are you?
Then go to Matthew and then go left.
Yeah, Malachi. How about Nahum, actually? Well, yeah, it gets some left of that too. Very good. Wow, what the hell.
After Jonah.
Yeah. Took me a
Yeah,
minute to
anyway.
find it.
So there you can read this again would be the entire chapter to it. But it's just going to talk about what his description of that. And the book of Kings will do the we'll just do some descriptions of historical things about it. And so, of course, there's parts of Isaiah that does also. Because the king of Ethiopia was involved in this, and the literature includes a lot of Ethiopian records. But the Bible's the only one that tells of the destruction of the Assyrian army by the angel of Yahweh. That's the only one that talks in the Bible. They don't, none of the rest of these records give any glory to God about it at all. And we know the Bible certainly does. So there is a pretty major section of the book here that's written during the time of the Assyrian crisis, which gives the flavor of what's going on when Isaiah was getting into these things. And again, we talk about him later. Well, we kind of went through it. I don't know if anybody remembers who his father was and where he's born and so forth. So we're going to take a look at the Babylonian period now. That the captivity, the circumstances anyway, the setting up of that was happening around 586, 536. They don't include too much in the way of specific details and descriptions of Babylon or the exiles either. So in some of the oracles they had, but it's not anything like the Assyrian background because they are not first-hand eyewitness accounts of the life and circumstances in Babylon. Especially if Isaiah had lived there, you would think that there would have been more descriptive writing than there is about it. So the thought there is that he never did live there. The most specific reference comes with the mentioning of the name of the king of Persia. Remember him, Cyrus? And he ends up conquering Babylon, you know. Isaiah 44 and 45 will describe those things. But there again, that's a lot of reading at this point. And without others, I kind of hate to do it. And I know you guys go home, first thing you do when you get in after the study, you read what we studied. So I think that's so marvelous to know. See, I couldn't even, I did get a smile finally.
I'll say what?
Well,
I thought, wonder who told him that.
Mm-hmm. How did he know? How did he know?
Mm-hmm.
So the presence of that name of Cyrus has prompted a lot of people to think that the second part of this collection of work of another prophet. I think maybe one who lived closer to the events and might be expected to use a name like Cyrus, because that would be an eyewitness more than the other. And this other prophet probably saw Cyrus coming against Babylon anyway, so he was predicting things that he would destroy Babylon and free Israel up. No, this is speculation. But there again, just trying to get some ideas about this. Oh, I'm gonna have to. This doesn't go up any higher, does it?
I don't think
No,
it
it
does,
doesn't.
does it?
Okay, well, that's okay. Usually I don't need to, but I'll do this.
Should sit down with this.
Then I'd have to.
Oh, I see. Well, it just won't work.
Yeah,
either
that
way.
can't please
I'm
me, I guess.
telling you.
Well, there's kind of a question, is what sort of use can you make of the name Cyrus then, especially in the oracles? The scholars that criticize a lot, find it pretty hard to accept that a prophet could predict the name of a king.
Call them CNN.
Some hundred,
Call them CNN.
Yeah, exactly. To predict the name of a king 175 years before he comes on the scene,
I heard them call today on a video.
Now they do it, don't they?
I heard a lady call him today on an interview. One of the CNN reporters was interviewing 3 of them, Trump supporters. She called them the Clinton News Network.
Yeah, I like that, all right. Sounds okay to me.
True.
Well, somebody came on the other day and they said, you're just one of those Trump supporters. And I said, I'm not,
Mhm.
but I do support the president,
Yeah, there you go. That's it.
and you should too. I don't care what his name is.
No, that's right.
I'm sure not everybody in the day like George.
Well,
George Washington.
They don't like him.
they don't
Well,
want
but-
you.
but
A lot of
see-
his contemporaries at the time didn't like him.
But what did we learn? I agree. Some guy was on there one day and he said, well, as a kid, what did I learn about George Washington? He chopped down a cherry tree.
Which come to be a lie.
Yeah, I know.
He said he didn't chop it down.
Who?
He climbed up in it and ate the cherries.
His dad said, "Who chopped down that tree?" He said, "I did not." He lied.
That's what I said.
Oh, I thought you said he didn't chop it down. He did chop it down.
He says, I cannot tell a lie. I did do it.
Yeah, he had a axe or whatever, axe in his hand. That's some
My-
strong little kid.
But the point is, in history, that's about all we can remember of him. Oh,
Yeah.
he threw $1 across the Potomac.
Now, see, I didn't remember that, but I do remember him being the first president
You realize it's a silver dollar, of course.
with his face on it, right?
I don't know whose
Not at
face.
that time.
Oh, yeah, they had all silver dollars back then, I
King
think.
George, I
And
think.
I know he rode across the river and safely in a boat.
Yeah, stood up in the thing.
He did.
Without a life preserver.
Yeah. I saw
Well-
pictures of that.
We really got
pretty
it down
famous
good,
thing.
don't we?
Pretty famous man.
Well, the guy made a pretty good point. When you
Yeah,
think
wooden
about it.
false teeth.
Yeah, he did.
Oh, that's true.
That
wouldn't it?
man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wasn't that Ben?
Hey, I've seen
No,
those.
that was
Have you ever seen
Washington.
them?
Not that I
Uh-uh.
want to. no.
I saw them.
Did you really? I bet he had lots of splinters.
You
And
saw
his
it in
mom.
Valley Forge.
Yeah. He was married to Martha.
Martha, yeah,
I think that was second time around.
and he knew Betsy Ross.
And
Yeah.
I did hear the other day that he really did not want the office of president.
Well, do you
He
blame the
really didn't
guy?
want to take it.
First president of our country.
But he didn't want the job. He really didn't. is what somebody
I
said.
wouldn't want the job, I'll tell you that.
Neither.
That's way too much stress.
Well, I think Trump seems to be weathering that just pretty good.
Well, yeah, but he grew up
Only
in
2 years
business. He knows how to handle business.
But he's used to that.
Yeah. Yeah, he is.
I think
He's
he
used to
thrives
it.
on that, to be honest.
I
about
think he does too.
it, you
I
know,
think he does too. He pretty much likes the challenge.
yeah,
Not me.
that's a good thing.
Yeah. It
Daniel
is.
prophesied about Cyrus too.
Daniel did.
Before he became power.
Yeah, might talk about that in somewhere, I can't remember.
Maybe. They
But-
kind of all go together.
Well, the royal line of Cyrus.
Hmm.
That's part of that, isn't it? Probably why it was liked by some. It was founded by this Achaemenes, who ruled from 700 to 675. And he was contemporary with Isaiah, so they knew each other that in that sense. And actually, well, remember the Achaemenid Empire?
Uh-huh.
Well, that's that man there. He had a son, Thespius, from 675 to 640. We will have a test. I was just kidding. We will.
Mm.
He expanded the boundaries of Parsa, which is Persia,
Mm-hmm.
far south. Because the empire head was great, big, he divided it between his two sons. Aramanes is in the south, and then Cyrus is the north. And the division meant that there was a ruler known as Cyrus, and is the point here they're trying to make, around 70 years before Israel went into captivity.
Mm.
So this Thespius also regained independence from the Medes, who had made Persia kind of a vessel really in 670. But the line of Cyrus I produced a Cambyses I and Cyrus II. This Cambyses was placed over the empire when Persia became Median province. You really getting all this?
Yeah.
And he married the daughter of Astyages.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
just bear with us on all this. You're not going to remember all that. Don't need to.
No.
Cyrus II was the offspring of that marriage.
Hmm.
So he united in himself the houses of the Medes and the Persians. And Cyrus, grandfather, I know you're loving this, about as much as me. Cyrus's grandfather on his mother's side
Yeah. I don't even know people's name on all my sides. What are you talking about?
was the great Xerxes, who overthrew the Scythians and Assyrians.
That gal did that?
Yes. No, she was the mother.
Oh, that's right. That's right. She probably put him up to it.
Oh my God, I have help here. Now, I'm going to just put this out because again of the time, it does get a lot easier than this. But
Per Charlie. It is what time right now?
he organized the Persian states, and he made a pact with this Nabonidus of Babylon against the law of this woman. So when he was summoned to answer for all of that, he refused to go. So because of that, he was attacked, and the grandson was defeated and taken prisoner. That's the point to all that mess. And so it just was it began a great empire as a point. That's how it happened. Now, again, I don't remember that. The point is, it became a big empire. And when it came time to take Babylon, the people wanted Cyrus to do it. They were pretty bitter against this king, Nabonidus, because he rejected their worship of Marduk. You know who Marduk was?
That big dog.
Miss Marmaduke.
Oh,
Pastor, would you please tell him who Marduk was?
yeah.
The
he-
God that sacrificed their children to him.
Oh, Marduk. Oh, okay. I thought you said Marmaduke. Oh.
I'm surprised you didn't think maybe it was a house cat.
They had a statue of him with his hands out.
Yeah,
like
and
that.
they laid
would
their
build
kids
a
on it.
fire on the inside of him and heat the arms up, and
Put
then
his
they laid the
kids in
children
the-
in the arms and let them burn to death.
Boy, well,
We're just about as
that's why they're
barbaric.
mad at him, because he rejected that worship and kept them exploited as slaves, which is so good.
Yeah.
And it's just an issue that comes up a little later on. This Cyrus, his general and all that, and Daniel, is the account of all of this in Daniel, Darius and Daniel.
Hmm.
But he took the city without a battle.
Yeah, he did.
And then Cyrus, a few days later, just marched right on in there.
Yep.
So, but we'll talk about that later. it's just important to know that the movements of these world powers we're talking about here were well known in the various courts and so forth, and which included Jerusalem. And then the book of Isaiah gives pretty sufficient evidence here that the prophet knew international affairs, and the growth and the influence of the Persian Empire wasn't hidden from the rest of the world. And that state and its kings were not non-existent, you know. And that went on till about 536 BC. But the name of Cyrus was associated with the rising power of all of this. As early as 670, 660 maybe.
The Xerxes too, and all that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But that Moloch, or however you said it. But anyway, they would had loud worship music so they couldn't hear the screams of the children.
Oh, good.
Yes, yeah. Isn't that just
Play music and worship real loud when the children were burning.
how lovely is it?
Well, you know, and they say that the worst smell there is burning flesh, human flesh. So how can they
Have
stand
you ever
all
smelled that before?
that? No.
I have.
Oh, I just.
When you read some of these accounts, I think it's, you know, God used these kings against their own will, really, to promote his own kingdom.
Eventually, he sure did.
He used them to punish Israel, but he also used them to rebuild Jerusalem. And so,
Well, the prophet we're talking here, he says that the Persians would seem to be, in this line of things going on, the next major power after Assyria. You know, Babylon did have a brief period of time in there. Nineveh was taken by them, and but the rising power was beyond Babylon. They just happened to be there at the time. But Isaiah certainly was inspired by God, but he knew a lot of things too. And God revealed to him that Babylon was going to take Judea into captivity, and that a Persian king would allow them to come back, which, as we know, did happen.
Yep.
So, but there's so much, and we get back to all this later on. So maybe by doing this, we'll remember some of it. I've got an outline here, and I'd like to be handing it out, and then I got to thinking, no, because we are going to read. We'll start reading. And so the first, and you might want to jot it down. The first one's actually the book of Judgment is really chapter 1 through 35, and chapter 10. I'll take it back. It's 1:1 and 35:10. I'll get it right one day. That's just for information, because we go back now. We're going to start into this stuff. Chapter 1:1, and let's get into Isaiah here. And it will tell some stories. It's a message of rebuke and promise. Chapter 1, verse 1, and then chapter 6, verse 13. But like chapter 1, it's just simply saying the vision of Isaiah, and of course it calls him the son of Amos here, concerning Judah and Jerusalem, which he saw during the reigns of Uzziah, Jotham, and Ahaz. Thank you, Ahaz, and Hezekiah, kings of Judah. You know, I butcher the language pretty good. Of course, I don't speak Hebrew too well, and some of the others. Then if you look at chapter 6.
These are written in English.
Joe, shut up. Smart guy. I don't think I know enough of you. Chapter 6, verse 13. It says, yet there will be a 10th portion in it, and it will again be subject to burning. See, we're talking here about the rebellion.
Right.
And
Is that
6:5.
6:13? 6,
13.
6:13.
Mm-hmm.
I don't say anything about burning.
It will, well,
But don't.
doesn't mind.
He's reading the American.
Yeah, he's got a different one.
Subject to burning, it says, and like a terebinth or an oak whose stump remains when it is felled, the holy seed is its stump.
Mm-hmm.
What is it saying? Well, I found out one thing. Teresa's book,
Oh, yeah.
as far as copyright is concerned,
Mhm.
as long as you don't, well, when you think what copyright means, it means a right to copy somebody else.
Mhm.
Well, if you use the King James version of the Bible, you don't have to copyright that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it's a public domain.
It is.
Oh.
Any other, you do,
Mm-hmm.
but not that
Wow.
one.
Does she have any idea when it come out?
Well, I tell you, we got the cover, or the cover picture and everything we want.
Mm-hmm.
That's done now.
Good.
And then we got some things on the back of it for the last page actually, and the inside cover of some pictures. So now next thing is deciding what to put on the back.
Mm-hmm.
We thought we might put a picture of Joe
Mm.
because
Put bars in front of it.
well,
I understand.
I think people would look at that and go, "Wow, I gotta buy the book. I gotta see who is that guy." You know.
Yeah, I'm telling you. I got to find out about this one.
So,
You know, it would be nice if she had, just her picture and this young lady, was just a person that served God and,
well,
just a little bit about her little history there.
there is.
Oh, good,
Actually.
good.
And so the book is not long.
Don't have to be.
It's only maybe the most 50 pages. It is long.
That's all right.
Oh, it is. Because I know it's just
People
like
are more
anything
apt to
else.
read it.
It's quality.
Yeah,
It makes it not the quantity.
that's it.
And there certainly could be a what do you call it?
Sequel?
Thank you. Might come out at some point, but it is the story.
Good, good.
And you all probably know a lot about that anyway. But there may be things you don't.
No, probably
And,
not. Not everything, no. Uh-uh.
See, we've been working on that guy for 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I know.
But I really do think that people, if they read it, can be encouraged to know. They're either going to believe what she has said happened to her or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if they know the Holy Spirit, they're going to know.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to really know.
Great. That sounds good.
Well, anyway, let's see where I came from here just now. I get sidetracked. We go down
You were 6:13.
as a rabbit hole. I always do.
Mm.
Well, if you were to read chapter 1, all of it, it's really talking about Israel's very ungrateful rebellion
Mm-hmm.
and the Lord's pretty gracious invitation. What that and Israel's prospect of glory through the Messiah after the chastening for sin that will make them holy. And chapter 2, verse 1. You can read that, the word which Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. That's all that is. And then if you look at chapter 4, verse 6, where it says, "And there will be a shelter to give them shade from the heat by day, and refuge and protection from the storm and the rain." And that's what the Lord's wanting to do. And you can also look at chapter 5, just a second. Well, 1 through 30, which is the entire chapter. It talks about Israel's very swift and the complete judgment in exile.
Hmm.
In exile. like I said, this is just chapterizing here. And I had anticipated going ahead and reading the full chapters so we could get the full idea. We go, oh man, there's still things we got to pick apart, but it just seems easier to me to get a little idea of things as a whole and go back and do the other then. And then you guys can really get into that and hopefully and have your ideas about things that, you know, what y'all think. So that's why I had to pray a lot about this because I wasn't sure which direction to go with it. Is Isaiah's if you look at chapter 6, 1 through 13.
Isaiah's called to be a prophet.
You saw the Lord.
This whole thing is the cleansing, his cleansing of unholiness and his calling to the ministry, to minister to the unholy nation that is facing desolation now, of course, Israel. And that talks about that whole thing. And most of you know the story, I think. But again, we will get into it later on. If we go back, if others get here, we might go back and reread some of this as we go, because that really was the intent. But I feel like I ought to just kind of wait on it.
Okay.
Matter of fact, why don't we stop?
Okay.
I just thought earlier when you was talking about Nineveh, because the prophet Jonah went to Nineveh.
Yeah.
And it was despised by the Jews because
Right.
it was Syrian. It was really a Syrian capital. And the whole city, even the animals, repented.
Yep.
And what had happened was they stayed the hand of God's judgment against them. But it said, the historians say, just after a few years, they fell right back into apostasy. And that's when Babylon destroyed the Nineveh city.
Hardly any of them would do it like this. And I think of us. Somebody put on the internet the other day a picture of a mega church. And I think Ron did that.
Oh,
And
maybe.
then right underneath it was another little dinky church that had maybe 25 chairs or something.
Yeah, I
sitting
think
there.
I've seen that.
And the caption was, there are those that want their ears tickled and there's those that want to know the
Yeah,
truth.
I did see that.
And sadly,
A big difference in the congregation in there.
yeah,
The sad thing about some of the mega churches is the problem they're having with their leaderships, with the indiscretions and immorality running rampant in their. One of them they just let go because he was vulgar. He became very vulgar, and they let him go. Then it ended up 5 of the elders of the mega church ended up being let go too, and so.
well,
Well, judgment's already beginning in the house of God, I'll tell you.
yeah,
It is. It really
I mean,
is.
you know, it's bad because them guys they get so big, and
Yeah.
they get to thinking they can do anything, and because what they didn't do anything. God built that church, and
Right.
they're destroying it with their immorality and stuff. They let run rampant in the churches. They don't preach the gospel.
That was their first fall.
you know, interestingly enough, what's happening on the radio, all of a sudden, we have new people every day. See, we've got over 3,000 names on the list of those that have been into it and out and
Okay.
so forth. I mean, is that many all at once? Well, they get a building and go after it,
I know how you are. I know how
But-
that is, yeah.
But the point is, it's not, that's, you know, this is radio. And
Sure.
But it's interesting to me that it's like that because they're after it, they're looking, and they're coming in now. And there's a fellow in there that had been on the police force for 37 years out in New York. So you kind of imagine what that must have been like. And he got through it without getting hurt. And now it is out of it. But people like that, And he is gonna be a staunch member of that, I'm telling you. There's a hunger there that maybe we don't realize is there quite.
Probably don't. We're not, you know what I mean? We're not exposed to it like
No, that's what I mean.
some people
You
are.
don't know how hungry things are.
Mhm.
No wonder Jesus said the harvest was
White
white
already.
Laborers are few.
and that.
Yeah, that's true.
But some guy, we had a Muslim guy come in there,
Mhm.
foul mouth,
Oh, no.
just terrible. But we can cut him out, so we learned how
Sure.
to do that. And then the other guy came on. You can't do this on radio. You can't have church on radio. You can't do that. And I said, sir, you know, there have been Christian nets on radio for like 80 years.
Mm-hmm. Or longer, yeah.
And then somebody comes to me on the air and says, you can't use the word of Jesus. You can't say Jesus on the air. And I've listened to this man, and he uses Jesus' name to cuss really bad.
Yeah.
I said, oh, I see. So you can use his name to cuss and be like that and, you know, down him, mock him. And I can't say his name because I love him and I want to worship who he is.
Mm-hmm.
I said, who do you think you are anyway?
Yeah.
I know you're not God.
No, not hardly, thank God.
But that's what's out there.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, I guess we should pray, eh?
Hey.
Joe might be in there too, the other Joe.
Oh, well, that'll be
I hope
nice.
he kind of is. He's a pretty staunch member of that too.
Good.
Well, Lord, thank you, Father, for being here with us this evening and just helping us learn what we can learn as we go along, Lord. I'm not going to hurry with it. Let you speak. Let it be as clear as it can be and needs to be with the items and things you want us to know, that we might, again, be ready in and out of season to bring your word to those who would ask. Father, we thank you for it. We do praise you and glorify you in it in Jesus' name. Amen and amen.
Amen.